So I've been saying this for a while now that the Finest NGC list produced by Alan Dyer and published in the Observer's Handbook is heavily weighted towards the spring. So that's meant that in order to get through the objects in the time frame that they'd be in the sky, we need to cover more objects per session. So we're going to do another 9 of them today. And again, I'm not able to just pick weeks where the moon is new. So we're just going to do it regardless of what the moon phase is and bring you into awareness of these objects so that later on you can, pick a night where the moon is cooperating and look at them then. So here's the list we've got for tonight, for today. There we go. And much like last time, I've got a nice little grouping, so they're kind of all in the same neighborhood. And at this point of the year, at least at the latitude of Toronto, the sky is getting totally dark around 10:30. But you could start around 10 o'clock, and as you work into the objects, the sky will get darker and darker. And again, because I'm looking at objects that are near the zenith in late evening, I'm actually going to use Stellarium and switch off and switch to equatorial mode. You can see down here in the bottom, there's a button for equatorial mode. And that means that I can actually move things around without them tipping over too much. So it's easier to navigate everybody when things aren't tipping over too much. So do that. All right. So first up, let's move some things around here. Take these on there. Yeah. So first up, we've got a real nice showpiece. It's the Cocoon Galaxy, or as Charles informed me, which was great, that in South Africa, they call this the rhino and calf. So let's bring this up. And this is actually really easy to find. I'll show you why in a second here. Whoops, let me bring up where's my deep sky objects here? That's why. Okay, there we go. So there's the Cocoon Galaxy. This is a small but bright, distorted spiral galaxy. Stephen O'Meara, who has superhuman eyesight, claims that he can see this in his 7x50 binoculars. I've not tried it, but maybe. I'm happy to hear of anybody that does that. But that basically means that any size of a telescope, good quality telescope, should be able to pick this up. And of course, the bigger your telescope, the more details that you're going to be able to observe. Discovered by William Herschel back on January 14th of 1788. And he actually noted the 2 parts that you're seeing here. So there's the rhino and the calf, if you want to think of it that way. There's number 197 and 198 of his class 1 objects. So this is actually NGC 4485. And I guess the gravitational interaction of the two galaxies has produced this sort of bending of the arm or the disk of the galaxy. And there's actually, in some views, you can even see a kind of a star stream linking the 2 of them up. So collectively, these are also known as ARP 269. So ARP is the catalog of peculiar galaxies. So easy to find because it's sitting here just 0.6 degrees northwest of this bright star Chara, which is beta Canes Venatici. And so if you just Control B here, you put your finder scope on Chara, or even if you put your low power eyepiece on Chara, there's the galaxy sitting right next door. Now, you probably are going to want to magnify things a little bit in order to keep the bright light of Chara out of your field of view. So what I recommend is maybe pick an ocular like 64X, something a little bit more, so you can start picking up some more of the details in it. So you want to use averted vision on this galaxy, of course. You're going to try various magnifications to pick up more aspects of it. You're going to want to note the shape and the orientation. You might be able to see some structure if your aperture is big enough. So some knots of star formation, things like that. And maybe you can even detect that connection to the little companion galaxy if your telescope's big and your sky is very dark. This is about 27 million light years away. Now, my tip is to go next to Caldwell 26, which is also, actually, before we do that, let's go out a little bit further. So we're going to extend Cor Coralie to Chara and continue heading out to NGC 4111. So we'll do that one next. That's a bright edge-on lenticular. Now, Stellarium doesn't have an image for it, so you need to put on the Digital Sky Survey tab in Stellarium to bring that up. So there you go. This is edge-on, so it's compact enough to be visible in any size of quality telescope. Discovered by William Herschel on January 4th of 1788, number 195 of his Class 1 objects. It's 5.2 degrees west-northwest of Chara, and that, just to sort of get everybody in perspective here, is in the direction of the lower arm of Ursa Major. So this the star Psi and the star Chi, Ursa Majoris. So that's what you want to sort of head in that direction, but you're going to stop, you know, less than a palm's width from Chara. Let's see. You could also look for this little grouping of stars. Let's just pull back a little bit here. Stellarium's a little bit jerky. This grouping of stars, 67 Ursa Majoris, is in the same neighborhood. And actually, if I put up the telescope view, and I'm just going to go back to my lower eyepiece. So you can see that they'll actually share the field of view. So the galaxy and that trio of stars is a great way to narrow yourself into view. Another way you could do it is you could split the difference between Psi, Ursa Majoris, and Cor Coralie, and then slew up a little bit north from there. But I think either of those will work. You've got a magnitude 8 field star right next door. Let me just wind back a little bit here and zoom in. Nice bright field star right beside it. You want to use your averted vision again. You want to look for use various magnifications to see how much you can extend the tips of the halo, note the characteristics of the core. If you have a larger aperture telescope, then it should get a little bit longer, extend a little bit longer in your field of view. There's been reports that you can see some variation in brightness along the slash of light. So see if you can see that. And then you can watch for some of the nearby galaxies. So if I bring up the galaxy list here, so there's a bright galaxy here, another one here, and then there's this very faint but large galaxy. This one's called PGC 38356. So that would be kind of maybe an imaging target if you're imaging this area. This would be a cool area to do an image. You could use your account at the Burt Gaffney Robotic Observatory. I think that would be a great a great field to go after that using that, but not for your visual observing certificate, but do that later. Observe it first visually and then use the BGO. All right, let's wind back a little bit here. All right. So off just to keep things tidy. So that's these two done. And then we're going to go down to Caldwell 26. And what's great about this one is that you can actually use the stick of Canes Venatici. And if you take this span from Cor Coralie to Chara and swing it to 90 degrees, that's almost precisely where Caldwell 26 or the Silver Needle Galaxy is. So this is another really terrific showpiece. Look at that. It's its length is upwards of half the lumen's diameter, or so approaching 30 arc minutes. 15 arc minutes in length from end to end. It's again visible in big binoculars and any size of telescope under dark skies. Discovered by William Herschel back on March 17th of 1787, number 41 in his Class 5. So that would be my recommendation to finding it, is doing that 90-degree angle. You could also kind of use Zosma in Leo as your direction you're heading. And that's another way of doing it. So you want to note the orientation, any structure you might see in the disk, and any asymmetry. So you'll notice that, the either end are not equally bright. So there's some things to look for, some details to look for there. Now, when you're in the neighborhood, I recommend doing these as a 2-for-1 because it's relatively easy to get to NGC 4228 while you're in the neighborhood. And the little twist on this one is that it has a dual NGC number. So in Stellarium, it's known as 4228, but in some apps and other lists, you'll see it listed as NGC 4214. So this is a relatively bright starburst galaxy. It resembles the Large Magellanic Cloud. It's visible in pretty much any good quality telescope, especially if your sky is dark. So William Herschel first identified it on April 28, 1785, and then his son John later looked at it and assigned a different number to it. So that's why it's got the 2 NGC numbers. But as I said, if you're going to search for it, you might need to use the 4228 number if the 4214 doesn't work for you. So what I suggest doing to find this one is to star hop. I'll just put on my field of view here. So you should be able to star hop south from the Silver Needle. It's basically one field of view at 1.5 degrees. So once you're at the one, just slew yourself south. And of course, my telescope view is flipped over here. So I'm going upwards instead of downwards. Or you could actually aim your finder scope midway between Alkaid and Zosma. So let me just show you what that would look like. So I'm just going to bring up so there's Alkaid at the tip of the Big Dipper's handle, and there's Zosma, and this galaxy sits right at the midpoint of the line connecting them. So that's another way of getting yourself in the neighborhood if you don't want to star hop from the other galaxy. So use your averted vision again, obviously. You can try different magnifications and try to pick up some of the internal structure, note its shape, maybe sketch its shape, things like that, and note the field stars. So there are some field stars kind of embedded or superimposed on the galaxy itself. This one's about 11 million light years away. Last up in this neighborhood, we've got NGC 3941. And this is a small elliptical galaxy. Again, no picture in Stellarium, so I'm going to add the deep sky image. There you go. So you can, this one's compact enough to be visible in 6-inch or larger telescopes. Discovered by William Herschel back on March 19th of 1787. It's number 173 on his class 1 objects. And this one's located halfway between one of Charles's favorite things. I'm just going to turn this off so we can zoom out a little bit. Turn on my pointer here. Between Chara and Alula Australis, which is the southernmost star in the 3 pairs of the 3 leaps of the gazelle.
3 leaps of the gazelle, right.
Yeah. So you want to find the easternmost footprint and the look at the lower star and just put your finder midway between that star and Chara, which we've already used to find a couple of these others. So that'll get you in the neighborhood. This was going to be pretty simple to describe, so you just want to use your averted vision and a few different magnifications to kind of pick up on its, its shape, its orientation, and see if you can see any difference between the core and the halo. It's about 36 million light years away. So that's the first group. That's your first group of 5. And then from here, we're gonna do an easy one. We're gonna go up to NGC 3877. And what makes this one so easy is that it's tucked in close to this bright star. Now in Stellarium, its name is Taiyang Shou, but it's actually Chi Ursa Majoris. And just bring this up here. So this is another one with no picture. So I'll just bring up the picture for you. Look at that. It's a nice, healthy sized lozenge-shaped galaxy. Bright enough for 6-inch and larger telescopes. Center this up here again. Discovered by William Herschel back on February 5th of 1788. It says number 201 of his class 1 objects. And again, it's so easy to find because you've got this bright star in your field of view. And the trick though, the trick though is that you're going to want to crank up the magnification so that you can actually hide the bright star. So let's just do an Alt-O and we'll select maybe the 6 millimeter eyepiece. So experiment with a few different things and placement of the object in the field of view, but you're basically going to want to hide that bright star outside of your field of view. So this is one where you're again going to want to note its size and orientation. It's got some structure to it. So if you do have a bigger telescope, you could try to look for some internal structure, some dark dust lanes and things like that. And again, note that it's a little bit asymmetrical, so that it's not going to be the same at both ends. This one's about 55 million light years away. So really easy one to find. Let's bring this back to this. So now we have a neat trio. And what's great about these trio is that you can galaxy hop between them. Once you found one, then you've got the other two for free because they're so close to one. So the first one up is NGC 4026. Center this one up. There we go. So this is a medium-sized lozenge-shaped galaxy. Just bring up its image here. There you go. Edge-on lenticular galaxy. It's bright enough for about an 80 millimeter telescope and higher. So the bigger your scope, the more you'll see, but you should be able to see at least its smudge with an 80 millimeter telescope. Discovered by William Herschel back on April 12th of 1789, number 223 of his class 1 objects. Now, it's located near Phecda, part of the Big Dipper's bowl. So this is the lower corner of the Big Dipper here. And another way of doing it, so you can kind of make a triangle with that Chi star and Phecda if you want. Or I noted that it's about midway between Alioth. Now, where's Alioth here? Alioth and Psi. Actually, yeah. So you can sort of see it just a bit below the midpoint between those two stars. So if you aim your finder midway between Alioth and Psi, you should be able to pick it up that way. Again, obviously, you want to use your averted vision. I'll just put it in the eyepiece view here for us. There we go. So this is at about 150 power. If we go down to, say, 65x, it's still a reasonable size to do that. So you're going to want to, again, note its shape and orientation, describe its core, which I think you can distinguish from the disk and halo, and see how far you can extend the tips on either end. There's also a bright field star nearby that you'll want to note that. It's about 42 million light years away. Okay, now from here, I'm just going to go to my stellarium and pick my lower power eyepiece. Again, I'm simulating the field of view of a 26 millimeter Plössl in a 6-inch Dobsonian reflector. And so that gives me about a 1.5 degree field of view. And so you can see here, I've got NGC 4026, and there are my other two finest NGCs that I'm chasing down. So I can actually just slew my eye at my telescope a little bit to the east, which is to the right in this view, and pick up 4088. And I'm just going to zoom in on 4088 here so you can see it. This is a great one. Look at that. Amazing. So it's a very bright, nearly edge-on spiral galaxy. It should be visible in medium-sized telescopes and larger under dark skies. Discovered by William Herschel on March 9th of 1788. Object number 206. By the way, he wasn't discovering these three on the same night, which is kind of interesting. It has a nearby companion galaxy, which is just here in the field of view. I'll just put on the designation here. You can see it. NGC 4085, which is nearby. And again, they share the same field of view. That has probably led to some warping of the structure of this galaxy. You can see it's kind of a strange shape. That's what's produced it or put it on the ARP list. So number 18 on ARP's list. So you can use that galaxy hop technique, or you could actually put your finder midway between Mizar and that star Psi Ursa Majoris again. So again, describe as much of the shape and size and orientation as you can see. And also don't forget to look for the companion nearby as well. This one's about 45 million light years away. All right, I'm going to put it back in the eyepiece view here, and we're going to finish up with our NGC 4157, which again just go ahead and nudge the telescope over and take a look. And you've got it in your field of view. This one is nearly edge on. Look at that. Beautiful bright slash of light in the eyepiece. This one's going to be bright enough for medium-sized and larger telescopes. In fact, if you've got a smaller telescope, give it a try. Let us know if you're able to see it, because it does look like it'd be reasonably bright. Discovered by William Herschel back on March 9th of 1788, on the previous night of the previous object. So these did come on the same night, object 208. So it's, you could also, hopefully you're doing these all three together, but if you didn't, you could also aim your finder 70% of the way from Mizar to that star Chi Ursa Majoris. So again, averted vision, different magnifications, size, orientation. Watch out for the field star at the end of the disk, edge of the disk here, and another one at right angles to the disk. Describe the core. Look for the dust. There's some dust in this one, and again, a really asymmetrical lozenge shape. So that one's about 50 million light years away, and that's it for now. I think we've got one more group of spring objects, and then we're done. Any questions?
Don't see any there. Just in case you were wondering, that name, the Rhino and the Child, comes from South African astronomer Magnus Stryker from 2006, and then all of our colleagues jumped on it, so you see it all over the place if you're in that part of the world looking at the sky. I think it's a great name for it.
Yeah, and I'll bet it's not the only name for it.
Oh, we're working on that.
I know you are. Good. Excellent. Well, that's all I have for today. I hope everyone enjoyed that, and you know, give us some feedback on what you see of these and how you manage with them. I'm happy to hear that. We'll be back.
All right.